Hi, thanks so much for joining me. I'm King Loki. I'm the editor of Death Wish Poetry magazine and the host of the Demon Toast podcast. And I'd like to thank you for checking out this video. This is a series where I interview the writers that are published through Death Wish, whether that's through our digital magazine or our upcoming physical magazine, to be announced very soon. I just want you to know that our writers come from all walks of life. Some of them are experienced, seasoned, practiced writers with books and publications that span digital and print, and others are just starting out. Some of them are my age, in their 30s. Others are in their 20s, and still others are even older than me. And I just think it's fantastic that we here at Death Wish Poetry can cast a shadow like that, as broad and dark, that allows all these different incredibly talented individuals to shine.
Okay, my name is Haley Rose Guthrie, and this poem is called Death Dreams Under the Cerulean Sky Poolside. Sun never sets on skin, skin settles for sun. Screen caught in the cracks, carvings etched in blood. Pool palms the widespread sky. Sometimes paradise withholds, hatches spare stumps and limbs. Lost my mind when I took a dip. Lifetime of ideation's toe, body unrecognizable. Knives and nooses cloud, mark of madness on this exquisite perfection. Without weights, no way to explore the deep. New neuroses, symptoms, who counts? 3 palms erect and waving. Wave back to ensure my limbs are still attached by coarse black stitches. Turn on my stomach, eye level, the water a deep, velvet maroon. My name is called by no one. I scribble to tether me to time. Pains denouement. A cloud arrives. Past selves carry present self old wounds. Reopen them and gouge. When death seems the only way out, of the gate I walk home, under the quintessential California sky. Yes.
Beautiful.
The second poem is If I Die. No one wears black. Bring forth your sequins, garish and gauche, feathers and fangirling over my hairpin trigger legacy. Never lost my luster, even though I begged to be underwhelmed by all of you, here wishing I hadn't left you out.
Hi there, welcome to another Author Spotlight. I'm King Loki, the editor of Death Wish Poetry magazine, and with me is one of our wonderful poets. She was in our first edition of our magazine, our digital magazine, Haley Rose Guthrie, here to talk about her process, what makes her tick, and her poetry. Haley, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I can't complain. Never had a bad day.
Lucky for you.
Yeah, so tell us about your dog, Benjamin Dingo.
Benjamin Dingo was an only child until a few weeks ago, and he got a brother named Calvin. We've rescued both of those dogs. Ben just turned 6. And we were convinced when we adopted him that he was mostly Jack Russell. He's like 35 pounds. He's got the white and brown going on. And we decided to get his DNA tested. And he is 0% Jack Russell and is like the muddiest mutt. He's like pit bull and hound dog and chihuahua and bulldog. Like any kind of dog you can imagine, Ben is that. So yeah, we love them a lot. They're kind of kooky when they're together.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, what you'd call a super mutt, right? Yeah, it's like how my dog, we thought she was some sort of whippet, some sort of greyhound, and turns out American foxhound, so whatever. It does pay to get the DNA tested. Your poem, Death Dreams Under the Cerulean Sky Poolside, is exquisite, it's free-flowing, it's relentless, but it has this lazy, slow energy, like the stagnant water of a pool, right? Is my understanding that the speaker is floating alone in a pool, reflecting morbidly on herself, correct?
The speaker is laying on the ground eye level with the pool, reflecting morbidly, because this is a day that actually happened, that I lived. I was in San Diego at the time, and I was really sick. I had a psychotic break. So, like, the slowness, the warped feeling with this poem was very much like my blunted affect for a lot of the time, but then I would, like, swing to the manic, hyperactive part of the psychosis. And so the feelings of this poem is like just like being dragged, like slowly just like dragged by the suicidality, by the overwhelming pain, living with the juxtaposition that this is like the most beautiful place on earth. Yes, and yet I'm more sick than I've ever been.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that. It's existential in that way. We've all been there, honestly. I will say the title of a poem carries tremendous weight too. I lost a sister to a pool when I was younger. She drowned, and that's not what your poem is about at all. But title grabbed me and pulled me in, and I was able to follow what you were doing, what you were feeling in the poem. The train of pain you were experiencing, and isolation, and just tearing apart. Do you want to tell me how you arrived at the title?
I arrived at the title. I felt like this was one of the poems that kind of wrote itself. Like within the poem, talking about scribbling, like that was actually happening in real time. Like I was just so out of it, but I knew things needed to come out. There was like so much pressure of what was going on inside that it was like a slow leak that it would eventually just like explode. And going back to that juxtaposition of like my best friend and I moved across the country. We're from Missouri. Like we had all these dreams about what San Diego was going to be like, and it's beautiful, and we're at the beach every weekend. All of these lofty ideas at age 25. And then for things to crash and burn so severely with my mental health, like it was perfection and it was the worst of times. It was like those two things just couldn't go together.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very stark juxtaposition of like beautiful locale, darkest, most dreary feelings and thoughts, really. I was wondering, is there a reason why you chose to keep all the words lowercase? It seems like kind of a newer thing I've been seeing lately. I don't really understand it.
Yes, I chose to keep the words lowercase. I felt like that was the most authentic way to write all of these poems, and these two poems are in the same collection. It almost to me, the all caps titling is like, hey, like, let me catch your attention. This is raw and real, and these titles may be shocking, the subject matter. And then doing lowercase is kind of like, come closer, like curl into the darkness, dip into my mind, like drawing you in.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. I like that. I always appreciate when poetry breaks the format, deconstructs the language, as it were. So that is certainly what it does. I mean, it's understated. It's almost whispering and kind of a hissing voice. It really does draw you in a very visceral way.
And it's like these poems are on subject matter that is not like prim and proper. Like it's not the commas and the periods and the punctuation and the capitalizations. Like it's like gritty. So that wasn't a fit.
Fair enough. Yeah, it transcends that. Do you want to tell us about your process? Are you a more ecstatic writer, or are you more of a careful planner?
A careful planner in real life. I'm all about the list, the color coding. That is where I live. But in my writing, I wrote these poems. I wrote the San Diego poem in 2014, edited it in 2022. I wrote these other poems in 2022, and basically I had a huge influx of inspiration that like came on really suddenly. I hadn't written in 6 years. I hadn't written poetry in 6 years, and there were really times along the way where I like thought to myself like maybe I'll never write again. Maybe I'll never have inspiration again. I had this huge influx of inspiration, hadn't written in 6 years, had a conversation with my mom, talked about who knows what, and somehow at the end of the conversation she said, "I can't wait to read your writing again one day." And literally, it was like, boom. And I was like, why not now? Why not today? Like, what am I waiting for? Let's get this shit going. And I wrote my first poem after I got off the phone with her. After a week, I'd written 64 poems. After 7 months, I had written over 350 poems. And it was just like coming out rapid fire.
Wow, yeah, that is hitting a vein right there. I can't imagine being that prolific.
I couldn't imagine it either until it was happening. And then I still couldn't believe it along the way.
I went through a period where I was just creatively dead. I think it was, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, this was before the 2016 election, so it was just regular garden variety despair and depression. It wasn't the world is burning depression. So no, I went through a period where I wasn't writing at all, and I didn't know what was wrong with me. I would take out my notebooks and I'd be like, "This is all garbage." And at one point, I ended up writing a piece, and I was crying. It was beautiful, you know. That can be a real, you know, a real eye-opening experience. I'm not a big fan of him, but James Joyce, he describes himself as an ecstatic writer, you know, and I would describe myself that way also. You know, I keep bringing up this quote from George R. R. Martin where he says there's two kinds of writers. There's the architects and there's the gardeners. The architects know everything that goes into their piece. They know every character, every twist, every turn, every bit of history. Gardeners, they plant their seeds, they prune, they rake, they do this and that. It takes forever. It sounds like you would be more of a gardener, right? Is that...
I think it totally depends on the poem. When I created this collection, I have a poem, I think it's maybe 6 lines long. It's really short. And my bestie is my editor, because I don't have an editor, so she is my ride or die. And we went back and forth on that poem. I mean, I think it was the poem I edited the most, and it ended up being exactly what it started as. Like, I ended up just keeping it how it was. And we edited it like 21 times and just kept beating our head against the wall. Like, what does this need? What is this missing? And then we're like, wait a minute, this is it. But then, you know, other stuff felt like it just came, you know. It was really easy to write.
Emerged into the world fully formed. That's funny that you edited it so much and just, like The Hobbit, you came right back. Why don't you tell us about that collection of, you know, of poetry there?
Yes, so I am thrilled. This is my first collection. It's unpublished. If you want to publish it, let me know. It is called Pyrrhic. Again, achieved at excessive cost is the definition that I'm using of the word. And it is 67 poems, 3 chapters. And it kind of starts as my, like, descent into madness and goes through... you know, suicidality is woven throughout, but addiction and grief and loss, all regular human emotions, but it is just, like, laid the barest of bare. Like, I am not concerned about taboos. I'm not concerned about saying things people are scared to hear. Like, it's just me in my life. And I used to really struggle with feeling like I needed to hide who I was and the things I had been through. And I'm 37 now, and I don't feel that way. I feel like I can just be myself. It's one of my greatest accomplishments. That and my sobriety, Pyrrhic, is one of my greatest accomplishments. I had so much fun, and I think that's something that sometimes people that read it don't understand. Is like, it's so grim, it's so dismal, it's so sad. I was like thrilled the whole time. Like, every day I'm like, you know, and then I was so suicidal that this happened, you know, like, I was just so full of joy. And I don't know if I'll ever experience that again, but it was like one of the best times in my life.
That's really cool. I totally relate to that. Like, I have a single book of poetry that I self-published. It's called Dream of the Ash. It's about, I don't know, my relationship with Norse mythology and Odin and all that. And it begins with me hanging myself in a ritualistic way. And, like, people read this, like, dark thing where I'm walking through hell and talking to all the poets, and it's like, are you okay? And it's like, no, this is the best I've ever been, you know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like, being able to express yourself through poetry is one of the most honest and powerful things you can do. And I think in a lot of ways, fantasy literature, poetry, these are some of the most real, even though they might stray into more fantastic things. Obviously, your poetry is a lot more... Well, I haven't read Pyrrhic, of course. Pyrrhic. I'm making assumptions, but your poetry is a bit more grounded and more fixated on who you really are in a more direct way without the use of, like, you know, expansive and epic metaphors. But, like, still, poetry has this ephemeral feel to it where it'll drift in and out of what you're expecting, and at the end of the day, people will relate to that more just because of the kinds of creatures we really are. You know, we're thinkers, we're dreamers, and yeah, we like that kind of stuff.
Well, obviously I hope to get Pyrrhic published, and I do believe it'll get published at some point, not because I think so highly of myself, but because I feel like there are so many people out there like me, and I needed this when I was younger. I needed something like this when I was really, really struggling before people talked about mental health. And I feel like one part of it was me processing my traumas and my pain from the past and moving through it. And the other part is wanting to give voice to the people who are still hiding and who are still staying small and can't be themselves.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a lot of what we do here at Death Wish, where we're trying to give a comforting shadow for people to sort of grow in, you know? And what I wanted to ask is, so Pyrrhic is unpublished as of now, yes?
Yes.
Okay, understood, understood. And frankly, I'm not the one to tell someone to not seek publication. I did reach a point with my fiction writing where I was sort of like, you know, I can keep chasing an agent, or I could just write my next book.
Yeah.
And figure out the marketing as I go. This is the struggle that goes on when you're, you know, a working class writer, as it were, I think, you know. Have you taken any steps to, you know, like, what are your views on self-publishing, and like, what have you taken any steps to find an agent or a publisher?
Yes, I have been submitting since this time last year. I think I've gotten published in the past before all the Pyrrhic stuff, but I think you're the first person to publish me Pyrrhic. When I started submitting last year, when you published me in your first edition, I think you were one of the very first people to publish me. So I've gotten quite a few publications, a few poems published, maybe like 25 or so, and I've gotten tons of rejections. You know how it is. I've submitted my stuff so many times, and have been submitting the full book as well. I'm waiting to hear back from a few people. I think because of the subject matter, it is kind of niche. I don't know, from the things that I like, the typical vibes of poetry in general. So I feel like it's going to take like a very specific publisher that's going to be like, yep, this is it. But I don't know, I kind of like getting rejected as much as I like getting accepted, because that means somebody read it. Even if they chose not to use it, or they didn't like it, or it's a no, like, still somebody actually read it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I will say that some of the best feedback I've gotten was from, you know, some of the kind rejection letters that I've gotten over the years. I mean, you know, a lot of them are form letters, but often I'll get people who say, you've got great storytelling talents, I like this and that. The market is just not ripe for this, and I don't want to take her, you know. I've never been as masochistic as Stephen King, where I put them on the wall, but that is the way to look at it, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm doing it. I'm putting myself out there. If I die, it feels like a sense of, like an admission of a sense of stylist isolation, which I'm certainly guilty of. Does it reflect your attitude towards friendship or human communication?
Not so much either of those. So If I Die is kind of like comedic and sinister at the same time. It's kind of like going out fashionably and like Girl on Fire, all the colors, all the sequins. And what it makes me think of, you had mentioned a song in the questions you gave me, the preamble to the Black Parade. Mm-hmm. And I was not familiar with that song. I did listen to it. The song that it makes me think of is Empty by Ray LaMontagne. Are you familiar with that song?
I'm afraid not.
Some of the lyrics say, I looked my demons in the eyes, laid bare my chest, and said, do your best to destroy me. I've been to hell and back so many times, I must admit you kind of bore me. And so that's kind of like the vibe of the poem, like ironic, a little tongue-in-cheek, you know, just like making light of something so serious, just for the sake of doing it.
That's pretty cool. I like that. A lot of your writing seems to be this sort of embracing of like all your scars, wearing them as some kind of like fabulous dress, if you will, and being like, what you gonna do? You did list a bunch of really cool publications in your bio. Did you want to expand on them?
Well, okay, so yes, I have gotten published several places. I think I sent you the list. But the place that I love getting published in the most is Dark Poets Club. Are you familiar with them?
No.
Oh my gosh. Well, they're right up my alley, and they maybe would be up your alley too. Like, they only publish the dark. They just publish on Instagram, and one of the cool things about them is you submit, the first time I submitted 10 poems, and they said they were going to publish me, but they didn't tell me what they were going to publish, and there was like no information, and they didn't tell me when. So like, I'm on the Instagram like, when's it going to be my turn? And then one day I just get tagged, and it's a poem. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the poem they chose. That's awesome. So I have another one coming out, and again, I have no idea what it is. It's a surprise, just surprise publishing, and that's really refreshing and really fun.
It's like putting the quarter in and hoping you get the little
Yeah, it's
Pokemon, and
like,
you.
who
Yeah.
knows?
When is it coming? That's crazy. I gotta say. Obviously, I'm 34. There's a lot of weird stuff that I don't know about. The Instagram poetry thing is kind of still a curiosity to me. Obviously, we do promote our poets. This month, we're starting to finally promote our winter edition on Instagram, but that's not primarily what we do, and it's probably just because I'm older and I don't know things. But that is a thing where people will write like a 1-page or 2-page poem of like 6 lines, the right amount to fit in a graphic, and they'll just post it on Instagram. Is that something you shoot for? Is that something like I find it so weird. In my head, it's like, well, buy my book, or visit my magazine or whatever, and not like, oh, let me screenshot you this. Like, is that just
Did I do that on my own Instagram?
No, well, maybe. I mean, what are your thoughts on Instagram poetry? I mean, and do you do that?
I've posted a couple of pictures of printouts because I'm old school and that's like all I know how to do.
Yeah, I've
But
done that too. Yeah,
there's too many
yeah,
places that say it can't have been published online, and they consider social media to be published, which I don't agree with that.
yeah. It's
So,
obnoxious, isn't it?
well, it's like, really? Are we like following the trails all the way to the social media? Like, I don't know.
No,
So that
that's
has
silly to me.
deterred me
Yeah,
in the past. Plus, I don't have a social media dedicated to poetry. I just have my regular social media and then my craft social media. So
right.
I don't have like the best place for it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm not the best at this sort of thing either. I just use my personal one. Like, I'll post excerpts from my book or whatever, but then like you'll see a picture of my lizard, and it's like, In fact, Death Wish really got a big boost when I got my, when I started working with Tuxin Media. I published the girl that runs it, Ashley Sweeney. I published one of her poems, and she was like, "Hey, I'd love to help out," and that kind of gave us the boost we needed. So social media is a thing. I mean, like, it definitely helps to have a Blue Sky account. It helps to be doing stuff on Instagram. That is kind of fascinating that like they treat social media as publishing. That's wild to me. I don't draw any lines because I assume that a lot of the people that I'm going to end up publishing are going to be self-publishing themselves. I'm very supportive of that movement. If your stuff has been previously published, I'm happy to host it and spotlight it if it's good, That's my attitude. A lot of people want to be the one who discovered the next Wordsworth or something, and it's just like, it's aspirational and silly, to me. Just my 2 cents,
Self-publishing, it's right for a lot of people. I
Yep.
totally get that. There's no shade whatsoever. I feel like for me, I want to be chosen. I want somebody to cherry pick me and say, you're the one. Because I feel like that would be really validating, obviously. But for me, that validation would like translate into acceptance of who I am, of the things I've been through, of what I've written about, that like I deserve to be seen. And obviously like a stroke to the ego that somebody would choose me.
Well, I mean, creating art is egotistical in its own right. We can't help it. It's just the nature of the beast, and I understand that. I think that's fair. I think my attitude is that I also feel that, but to me, it's like when someone connects with me or buys my book, to me, that's worth more than a publisher. However, publishers are people, and I mean, I'm a publisher at this point, so I feel that. Did you want to talk about some of the themes that you're drawn to in your writing?
If it isn't already clear, I'm really drawn to the dark themes. But underneath the dark themes is so much the sense of loss and grief, loss of who you were, loss of who you could have been, loss of your youth or the years that you spent sick and down on yourself, and all of the perseverance it takes to keep getting up and keep trying to take care of yourself, or learning new ways, learning how to manage. I have bipolar disorder. When I wrote Death Dreams, I was undiagnosed and unmedicated. I would come to be diagnosed and medicated, and I feel like, especially with the medication, like telling that part of the story, I have several poems about that or around that theme of like normalizing things. Like, so many of us take medication. So many of us have mental health issues. So many of us have had med shame or any sort of shame and felt we're not good enough, you know? So it all kind of like goes along that, the whole like self-esteem, self-love, self-acceptance, the honesty, just the raw honesty, and like lifting under the curtain and being like, this is me. Here I am. I'm not apologizing anymore for this.
Huh. Fascinating. Yeah, cool. I feel that. Yeah, I mean, I'm medicated myself. I see a therapist. I think that mental health is sorely, aggressively, horrifically neglected, and, you know, we could all benefit from opening up a bit more. So, yeah, I think that that is really cool. I think it's great that you focus on that, and I think it's really good that, you know, you're not putting up like a huge like facade persona, if it were. You know what I mean? You feel very real, legitimate to me.
Legit.
Not yeah, too legit to quit, man. Somewhat on that, in that vein, who are some of the people you look up to? We've really learned to hate some of our heroes with the, you know, what we do on the Demon Toast podcast. You know, between Mr. Poe and Mr. Gaiman, it's just like,
Yeah.
You know.
One of my most notable heroes for my poetry is Gabrielle Cavalcaresi. She has written multiple books. I think she's written 3 books. I was first introduced to her in a class in college, and I just her style resonated with me. Her ability to put something so simple and have like just a million meanings and a million layers. She does something really well, especially in her first collection. I call it plain speak. That's what me and my bestie call it. Where it's like, you can read it at face value. Yes, there are layers. There's so many interpretations. You got to sit with it. But like, you can read it. It's not like all these huge words. It's, you know, everything's complicated and really thick and heavy. And so I think I gleaned a little bit of my style from her to just like, I'm always cutting it down. Like, a lot of my poems are short because I feel like less is more, at least for me personally. And I really identify with her poetry in that way.
Yeah, minimalism is a skill that is learned. You're very good at writing short poetry, I have to say.
Thank you.
Like, you're very talented at it. I struggle with it myself because I have more I want to say. I feel like it's not enough. Then it's like, you know, it's just, you know, I read something like what you write and it's like, that's how it's done, you know? So that's really cool.
Thanks.
Seriously, that's good. I think it's good to not list too many heroes because they will almost always let you down. She sounds like a cool lady.
I'm going to say my mom. Does that count? My mom's my hero.
Of course it counts.
She's my bestie.
We should all be able to look up to our moms.
Yeah.
You know, in an ideal world. So tell me, what does Halloween look like for you? I mean, you know, we love Halloween here at Death Wish. You know, it's always a good time. Every day's Halloween for us. But more importantly, I understand you make costumes?
I make costumes, and I was actually going to try to send you a picture of the costume I wanted to tell you about, Mother Nature, but I'm inept, so I couldn't get it to work. So
we'll talk after the recording.
Yeah, my aforementioned bestie, who's my editor, is also my party planner and my Halloween lifer. So every year we throw a Halloween party at her house. It's also like her birthday time, and we do the decorations, the themes. So I usually think of my costume about a year in advance. Like, before Halloween happens, I'm already thinking about the next year. What's it going to take? What do I got to do? I start sketching in the spring. I have a sketchbook that's just for Halloween costumes. It's amazing. It's holographic with, like, skulls all over it. But anyways, last year we did Mother Nature, and I waited 2 years to do this costume. I gathered stuff. I gathered all these flowers and seashells and 3D butterflies, and we got broadcloth, a big piece of green broadcloth, and turned it into a skirt, covered it with flowers and bugs. I had a celestial headpiece that lit up like a sun, moon, stars. I had a bodice that had all these like creatures and things on it, and it was so elaborate. It took so long to make, so many hours, so many glue gun burns, like an unrealistic amount of glue gun burns.
Wow.
But it was like chef's kiss perfection when it was done.
And that was Mother Nature?
That was Mother Nature.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. We'll need a picture of that to put on the old page there, you know. Cool. What are some of the others you've made?
The year before that, I was the Ice Queen, And I got all of these icicles off Amazon and made a huge crown. And then I also had shoulder I had shoulder icicles coming up from here. And then I made a waist cape. I saw one picture on Pinterest like several years prior, and it's a cape at the waist, obviously. But you can like see the legs in the middle. Everything was silver and white and crisp and glittery and gems and huge crown. And I used blind contacts, white blind contacts. Okay, first of all, I couldn't see anything. I was in a costume contest and I had the contacts in, and they were like, "All right, show us your stuff." And I was like, but I was on like a stage at Power and Light,
Which way?
and there was like a runway, but I couldn't walk on it because I felt like I was just going to fall into the audience because I could not see anything, and it was dark. I mean, it was like 11 p.m. during this costume contest, so I was just like, parading around, but like could not see shit. It was ridiculous, but I'm like committed. I'll go all the way.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's a lot better than me, where I just smush on some black face paint over my eyes, and I'm like, all right, I'm here. Put on the horns. Okay, Halloween time. Cool. No, that's fantastic. I am very jealous of that. I think it's really cool that you can also express your sort of grandiosity through, I want to say crafting? I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you go to Halloween parties, or do you hang out and let the kids come to you, give out candy?
We just go to my friends. We throw the party there. I don't really have a lot of neighbors that have little kids, so I don't sit here. I got to show off the costume, you know what I'm saying? But we always do the photo shoot a week before, because you got to get the pics. And the day of the party, you're getting the food, pumpkins. People are coming. There's so many things happening, so you got to get the photos in advance. We are very skilled photographers.
That's awesome. Yeah, my co-host Adrian, she actually makes jewelry and stuff. She would love you. That's really cool. You should have an Instagram just for that. People would go nuts for that kind of thing,
Yeah, I've got some good pictures from the past.
Yeah, there you go. So you mentioned your one, emotional collapse, as it were. You mentioned your one massive creative slump, which led to this current vein that's just gushing out poetry and effusive writing. How do you generally, your day-to-day, like, how do you stay motivated? How do you handle creative slumps and so on and so forth,
So I'm not currently writing anything because Pyrrhic is completed and I'm still working on trying to publish it. After my aunt, one of my favorite aunt, gave me On Writing by Stephen King. I didn't read all of it, but I got enough. I know. I got enough to know through a conversation with her as well that creativity goes in cycles, and like that when I thought my creative writing part of my life was dead and gone, I was creating the costumes and I was doing the interior decorating and the party planning. And right now I'm doing scrapbook journaling. It is like it's in a journal and it's scrapbooking, but it's not like pictures of you and your family. It's like stickers and texture and gems and paper and like all this type of stuff. So I'm really into that right now. So I feel like it just morphs from one thing to the next, and I can't force it. I don't want to force it. Anne Lamott is one of my favorite writers, especially Bird by Bird that she wrote back in the day. And her advice was like, sit down every day for a certain amount of time and, write, just do it. That's not my style. I'm not going to force myself to do it because if I force myself to do it, it's not genuine. It's two-dimensional, like you can feel that it doesn't have like the body and movement of something when you're passionate. So I feel like just pour myself into other things that excite me.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Stephen King, Anne Rice, all these types of writers that she passed, but regardless, they will tell you should be writing every day. And it's like, that's very nice for you when, you're living off your writing, you're relaxed to taking it easy, but hey, I work a job. Most people work a job. Most people have a lot of fucking responsibilities dragging them down. This constant gravity of the real world it's hard. You can't always do that. And I also find personally, this is my outlook and my process. I find that writer's block tends to be a problem with planning primarily. When I sit down to write and I don't know what Shatter's doing next in my book, I'm like, well, it's because you didn't sit and think about it, did you, sir? You didn't ask Shatter what he wants to do next, And it's time to put it away and go grab the Michael Moorcock off the shelf and read that, go read some comic books, you know? Go play some Monster Hunter, and boom, it's going to come to you like lightning. So I think that is correct. I think that creativity does absolutely come in cycles, you know what I mean? Some people who don't know what they're talking about are going to tell you that poetry is not the same as painting or anything like that. It's all art. It's all expression. It's all relevant. Everything you do, even this video that we're shooting right now, is a form of art. You know, I'm going to be editing it in a way to highlight the things you say, and so on and so forth. There's purpose to it, is what I'm saying. You know, creativity, precisely. So, yeah, I think that is a great way to put it, and I think totally fair. Something I like to ask is, you know, what does there's two words that we all grapple with: success, career. You know, I almost always feel like I'm spinning my wheels to some degree. It doesn't matter if I sell 15 books that week. I'm still like, oh man, you know what I mean? Like, when am I going to get there? You know, I hope the next book goes big. Even with Death Wish, like when we're getting lots of feedback and so on and so forth, it feels like, when is this going to take off? Do you ever feel that way? I mean,
yeah, I'm like, when's Spirit taking off? I'm sending those submissions. You know, I sent in a chapbook, and I'm like, let's get this from every angle. Let's see what we can do. But I think, and really and truly, I'm thinking about this as you're asking the question. Like, I feel successful that I did this, regardless of what happens next or ever or whatever. I feel so proud that I stuck with something, saw it to the very end, enjoyed it along the way, let it be natural, let it be fun, and have something now that I can look at forever. And I mentioned I submitted a chapbook. I hadn't read Pyrrhic in a long time, read the whole thing. I hadn't read through it. And then when I was selecting the poems, I could only select 30 out of 67. I read through it all. And I told my mom, I had the most wonderful experience. I still feel so proud. I still feel as proud as I did when I finished it, when I wrote it. You know, I feel like in the past I've written things and then later I'm like, ooh, that's kind of embarrassing. Or not my favorite. Looking back, and I stand by this. I double down.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. The work is its own reward, and should be, because that's what really matters, you know? Should we look for an audience? Absolutely, because, you know, it's art and you can enrich someone else's life, but, you know, I think that the value of having an artifact of your soul, which is what art is, you know, poetry, a painting, or something like that, is so that you could share it with someone else and they can get something from it, whatever that might be, you know? So, you know, I haven't gotten anyone telling me that success looks like their face on the bestsellers list or something like that. That's just depressing. I mean, that's so, I don't know, man, 2007, you know?
To be a public speaker, for NAMI or some mental health organization, to be able to identify with people, younger people, any people, and to be able to share my story in that way, because when I have shared my story, and again, this isn't me tooting my own horn, this is just the facts. When I've shared my story, you know, I'll make mental health posts on my Instagram or my Facebook, and of course there are the people that say wow, that's a beautiful story, but there have been so many people that have contacted me on the side, have messaged me, have texted me, asked me about my sobriety, asked me about going to therapy, say you know, there's this one gentleman that I used to work with, and he has a daughter who's going through it, and he said you posting about this stuff and putting a face to the scary helps me deal with what my daughter is going through, gives me hope. I'm going to get her a therapist, you know, and just supporting people, I guess.
I certainly think that that's fantastic. I think that is a very, very, very important part of your poetry. You know, if someone comes to you and says that to you, you've done something, you've affected change. And I hope that, you know, if that's what you would love to do, I hope you find it, and I'm sure you will. Because, you know, I could tell you're very determined. You know what you're doing, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of people have no idea, you know. I talk to them and they're just sort of I don't know, you know. I just write this stuff, and I understand that perspective too. But I think that we have very limited time on this earth, so I don't know. Figure out what you want to do with it, you know. What would you say to some of our viewers and readers who, I don't know, they sort of don't know what to do? They're looking for publication. They're struggling with the point of their art. What are some words of wisdom you might offer them, if any?
Say don't stop trying to get published. And kind of like what I mentioned earlier, like take it in stride. At least somebody's reading it. It's not just on your computer. It's not just in your journal. Like someone's actually giving it a chance. And you never know how close you were. You could have been the runner-up. You could have been the next person if they had one more spot, but they don't. Like, we can't always assume the worst, like, oh, they hated it, and, I should never submit to them again. Like, we just don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And have enough confidence in yourself, if you believe in your work, to know that it is good, and there will be somebody that will feel that way. It's just a matter of, you got to find the right people. And like I was saying, like, about Dark Poets Club, like, those are my people. There's a lot of people out there, really prestigious magazines, they're not going to publish my work. It doesn't fit their formatting. It's not their subject matter. And so you got to, like, find your niche.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was a time when I was trying to make it into Tin House and the Paris Review, and it was not happening.
Yeah.
It was not happening. I'm too Wagnerian, I'm too loud, I'm too me, and yeah. And eventually, I just found my niche, I found some publications that would take me, and that kind of gave me the validation I needed. So, yeah, as the poet Odorous Urungus once said, go ahead, sell out, but you'll spend your entire life wondering what would have happened if you had hung in there for just one more day. Yeah, I mean, coming from a more advanced writer, a more somewhat accomplished, author, I want to say, probably more accomplished than I am. Those are pretty strong words, and I think that it'll be a big deal for people to hear that. So, wrapping up, what do you read? Are you reading anything good right now? Are there any good TV shows you'd recommend?
I'm reading anything right now because I've been doing the scrapbooking, the puppy.
Okay.
We planned a Galentine's Day party that we had on Saturday, me and the bestie that I've mentioned many times at this point.
Galentine's.
Galentine's, women only, all the women in my family, there were 9 of us. Everything pink and gold, red, Mylar balloons, sweet treats. It was amazing. Crafting. It was a crafting party. Cool. I recently watched Your Honor and Tell Me Lies, and I loved both of those shows so much. Your Honor is kind of like a courtroom drama, mafia, family, mob boss type stuff. With Ryan Cranston, he was in Breaking Bad. Yeah. Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows. So I loved that. And then Tell Me Lies, I don't know any of the actors' names. It was on Hulu. It was very, like, sexy. And I was surprised by that. I didn't know what it was going into it. But it was also a drama, and it was juicy. Real juicy. 2 seasons.
You might like New Cherry Flavor on Netflix. It's really good. It's very sexy. It's about, like, black magic. It's very weird. I have no way to explain it. It's just...
see it to understand.
Kind of, yeah. That's cool. Thanks for being with us, Haley. So, this is Haley Rose Guthrie. Please read her poems on Death Wish Poetry Magazine. Links are below. And if you like her, well, stay tuned, I suppose. We'll probably publish her in the future, and her book, Pyrrhic, will hopefully find publication very soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks so much for watching that. Our writers are the lifeblood of what we do here, and, I really hope that something, inspired you from what they said, because they've all been very insightful and fascinating in their own way. Listen, we do take submissions. We are quarterly, and, if you want to know when our physical edition is coming out, or when our digital edition is open for submissions, please check us out on Instagram, link below, or go to our website. We're usually pretty loud about it. Also, if you want to support us, if you join our Patreon at the $1, level, or any level, really, I will personally send you one of these really cool stickers. And they're pretty big. They're pretty high quality. So, put them on your car. Put them on your back. Put them on your wall. I don't know. Put them somewhere. Or head over to Great Satan's Emporium and buy a super cool mug or a t-shirt. And, support us. It helps to support independent art. And, well, stay tuned for what comes next. Most likely more interviews and always more Demon Toast episodes and episodes of Monster Fangs as well. So, Ave Satanis.